Bottom line, that ruling was smashed by the Court of Appeal.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News with some truly incredible news coming out of the Court of Appeal here in Alberta for a number of clients, most sort of prominently Chris Scott as well as Pastor Artur Pawlowskis. You were working on the Chris Scott case. Just break down for folks what we had from the Court of Appeals.
Look, it's so hard for me to contain my exuberance and my excitement over what I see to be a nuclear missile to the heart of oppression and evil in this province, shot in by the Alberta Court of Appeal, which is the highest court in this land. First and foremost, the Court of Appeal knocked out the contempt sanction sentence in its entirety against the Pawlowskis and Chris Scott. Now, with the Pawlowskis, and I'm going to let Sarah detail some of the elements of the decision that affect the Pawlowskis, but essentially a resounding 100% success for the Pawlowskis in escaping the overreaching touch of the government and some of their oppressive policies. The Pawlowskis have won, and that is enormous. Chris Scott has also won, which is fantastic. We have been working feverishly on Chris Scott and, of course, the case concerning the whistle stop for a number of years, going right back to the start of the pandemic. Specifically, the case concerned some contempt sanctions for Chris's protest, that was his peaceful protest that was held up at the whistle stop in Mirror, Alberta, to protest the what we see to be unconstitutional COVID mandates that are slowly starting to show their cracks and get smashed by some of the judicial bodies in the province. And it's finally amazing to see this start to happen. So if people remember, Chris was essentially arrested, put in jail for 3 days. The trial judge basically said, Chris, you're going to have to pay 20 grand in sanctions, thousands more dollars in adverse court costs to AHS. He was under a grueling probation order that required him to not leave Alberta and also give this bizarre, compelled, draconian speech every time that he spoke in public opposing these government mandates and the government's view.
And just to confirm, so that was the Justice Adam Germain troubling ruling that was broadly derided, that Chris Scott, Pastor Artur Pawlowskis, only having an opportunity to fight thanks to people's donations at fightthefines.com, right? That's
exactly right. Bottom line, that ruling was smashed by the Court of Appeal this morning. We actually let out hoops and hollers in this office that echoed down the hallways. I got a text message telling us to keep it down a little bit because people are still working here. So exciting all around. Essentially what the Court of Appeal ruled in Chris's circumstance is that the mobility restriction order and the unconstitutional compelled speech order were not they offended the principles of natural justice, and they were troublingly unconstitutional, and they were stricken out completely. Now, we had them stayed before. The Court of Appeal really put the nail in the coffin of those unlawful provisions. They completely eliminated his probation. They have deemed that the 8 months probation that he's been on to date has been served. Probation's over. As well, Chris was awarded court costs for the appeal process. A bunch of the costs for AHS have been removed. So there's going to be a bunch of money coming back. Now, obviously, it's not going to cover the entire cost, but it's pretty amazing to be getting money reimbursed by the courts almost as kind of a punishment for the government's losing this battle. And the court costs are significant, and it's really a reversal of this tide of oppression and despair that Albertans have been feeling over the last 2 years. Finally, Chris's sanctions were reduced from $20,000 down to 10,000 minus what have already been paid. So a significant reduction in the contempt sanctions. Now, the difference obviously between the Pawlowskis getting a full victory and getting off essentially completely outside of the order, smashing these original orders and these original findings. And Chris Scott was actually a named respondent in the order. So there's some technical legalities there as to why he was still held accountable for breaching that court order. It's still unlawful to breach court orders, especially in Alberta if you're a named respondent. But seeing such a drastic reduction in fines, and basically the complete obliteration of all of the other provisions of the order that we found to be unconstitutional, unfair, and which offend not just procedural fairness and natural justice, but the very conscience of freedom and liberty in this province. It's so heartening to see this happen.
Well, this is a categorical repudiation of the attacks that we have seen, the clearly political and targeted attacks, the attacks that violated the Constitution and it seems violated the law. Again, very grateful to everyone at home who contributed, whether for Chris Scott at fightthefines.com or Pastor Artur Pawlowskis at saveartur.com. Without you guys, this absolutely wouldn't be possible. But last time we talked, and we're going to have more victories to report, we talked about this sort of hope, or at least the inclination that the courts are going to get this right eventually.
Adam, I'm going to tell you about a couple more victories right now. And this is super important. And I mean, we'll go into detail maybe at a later date, but it's so important to understand that the real heroes out there are the freedom-loving Albertans that have been contributing to this civil rights project. Without these funds, these battles simply would not be possible to wage against something as monolithic as the Leviathan state in Alberta, which has unlimited resources. I want to show you one thing. Calgary injunction protests. So if you remember the injunction that the city of Calgary got against the freedom protests in Calgary, we got that injunction knocked out. This is the check that we received for court costs for our victory in that case as well. So we are getting court costs. In the Fight the Fines cases, in well over 150 cases, still not one conviction at trial in any of those cases. Trucker defense relating to the Coutts border blockade. In addition to assisting the truckers on site, providing sound legal guidance on a piece-by-piece basis throughout that entire process and having lawyers with boots on the ground to assist these people during the demonstrations, we have actually been assisting, as promised, with most of the fines and regulatory charges that have come out of that protest. The distinction being that our mandate is just to cover those that directly relate to infractions involving the trucks on the highway. Not one conviction in any of those trucker defense files to date. This is outstanding news. It's not a partial victory. We are scoring routine and sustained successes in every arena in this battle. And it's not just the lawyers at Williamson Law, myself, Martin Raymond, Sean Mahalshan. It's not just Sarah Miller. It's not just the JCCF. It's Rebel. It's the Democracy Fund, the people of Alberta who are supporting these initiatives, speaking up against tyranny in this province. And this should give people a reason to get off their couch and cheer for liberty and freedom in this province. The tide is slowly turning. So this is a great day. And again, I'm overwhelmed. This is crazy. So.
Well, Chad Williamson of Williamson Law, thank you so much for this crucial update. As always, everyone at home, some of these fights still looming hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal costs, even with some of these court costs being covered. So continue to go to fightthefines.com or saveartur.com in order to contribute to keep these efforts alive. And as always, once thanks again, and thanks for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Soos. So once again, I do want to just encourage you. We do have some significant victories here, but there are still hundreds of cases out there that are depending on your donations. So go to fightthefines.com now. Any contribution that you make goes to the Democracy Fund, so they are eligible for a tax receipt, and they go a long way to keeping people like Chad Williamson and his team hard at work fighting for freedom. Again, go to fightthefines.com.